This video is brought to you by Crushin, the safe, secure, totally anonymous chat app. Download today on the iOS and Android app stores.
Hey guys, Sam here with dLifeHD.
And this is Victor.
And we're here together today for the first channel discussion video. And our topic is the life and history of the 3DS. Nintendo's handheld, one of their last handhelds actually, before the hybrid Switch, is now 10 years old. It just turned 10 years old last week. So we thought it would be appropriate to go back and discuss some of our memories with the system and just some of our favorite games and why we think it should be remembered. And so let's start with a discussion of how we both acquired our first 3DS. Do you want to start?
Sure. Chronologically, you would have gotten your 3DS before I would have, and I'll let you go into your discussion of that and how that went after me, but I remember that I ended up getting mine the following Christmas, and it wasn't just mine, it went off to the whole family because we have a larger sized family, and so it was sort of a family handheld console that everybody shared. But I feel like above all, since you already had yours and me and you were the main people that liked video games, I was probably the one that ended up playing it the most, especially in the beginning. And so that would have been in 2012, I believe, because I know that you got yours the same year as the 3DS launched. And it was a Christmas present, and it was sort of a surprise Christmas present, one that came after everything else and was hidden away before once everything else was unwrapped. It was sort of the last little gift that was given, and so Dad brought it out and everybody unwrapped it together, and it was a purple original 3DS. And also alongside of it we got New Super Mario Bros. 2, which is a game that for some reason is very shunned by the Mario fan base and recognized as a terrible 2D Mario game. A lot of people have a lot of gripes against the new Super Mario Bros. Series, but that being sort of the first Mario game that I got to play on the 3DS and sort of the introduction into a huge library that the 3DS already had, I have a lot of nostalgia around that game, and I really enjoyed it, and I never 100%ed it, but because there was a lot to get in it, but I got very close. There were 5 specific things that you could do to earn a star on your profile, and one of them was beat the game, and then there was a whole other ones regarding collecting the secrets in the game and unlocking every single level. And I remember that I was able to get 3 out of 5 of those stars on the home menu, and then I just played it for hours. And in addition to that, there was also a multiplayer function that was really fun. You could go through pretty much every level in multiplayer. And so that was sort of my introduction to the 3DS that Christmas.
When I got my 3DS, I was very hyped leading up to the launch of it. And there was one reason. And that reason ended up being something that never actually made me like my 3DS, but leading up to it, I was so hyped for the new Paper Mario game. Paper Mario was my favorite series. I had just finished Super Paper Mario, and the 3DS had this kind of like teaser trailer that came out, and it showed off a bunch of new games, and one of them was just called Paper Mario, and it was in development, and it looked to be a return to form. Super Paper Mario obviously was a side-scroller, but it looked to be a return to form to the first 2 games, and I was so hyped. So I had to have a 3DS. Not only that, I was hyped to have a handheld Paper Mario. That was just so cool. And we had the Game Boy, GBA, and the DS, so it just felt logical that we would get the next DS, but I wanted it to be mine. I didn't want to share with anybody, so I was like, alright, I gotta get this thing. So obviously I didn't have a job then, was only 10 years old, In fact, I had just purchased my first video game not that long before that. I had bought Super Mario Galaxy 2, and that took me a whole summer to save up for, so saving up for a system that had a launch price of $250 seemed a little bit overwhelming. But I washed cars and went out of my way to just be like, hey, can I mow your lawn? Over the summer, of course, I didn't get a lot of success with that, 'cause it just seems like that kind of money-making business is not really as common in this modern era as it probably was in like the 90s or just the 80s or really any of those ages where you just kind of think of kids going out and, you know, working hard over the summer to make some cash. But anyway, I managed to make about just under $200, and then Christmas rolled around, and I just thought, I want to get gifts for all of my siblings, and so ended up spending most of that on that, and then used the rest of it to pay for my Boy Scout summer camp. And so yeah, that dream kind of died. I didn't have any money, and then that Christmas, I got a 3DS. So in the end, my decision to spend all the money on, you know, other things for like more important reasons ended up paying off, because I got a 3DS. I got the blue, I'm not sure exactly what color it was called, maybe aqua. I have the box, so I could probably check, but I got the original blue 3DS that was used in all of the marketing material, and oh man, it was such a cool design. It was the shiny lid with like the black screen on the inside and then like the kind of plasticky back. Such a cool design. And one of the best things about the 3DS was I didn't have a game for it for quite some time, but there was so much to do baked into the hardware. And I didn't have like a smartphone or anything, so for me this was my first MP3 player. It had the cameras on it. It had the internet browser. So for me, it was kind of my all-in-one device for a while. It even had Netflix, you know, could binge some Phineas and Ferb if I wanted to. Not something you can do anymore, so that was definitely an era. And trust me, I did do that. But later on, my first game ended up being also a Mario game, which has gotten a lot of, not hate, but more so just like shunning. No one talks about it. In fact, it seems like most of the Mario games on the 3DS didn't have a great reputation, since we're also talking about Paper Mario and yeah. But Super Mario 3D Land was the first game I got, and I had already really finished all the games on the Wii I was interested in, and the Wii U had yet to come out, so the 3DS became my main system, and for that reason I was able to 100% most of the games I got on there. So I 100%ed Super Mario 3D Land, and I love that game. For me, it kind of felt like Portable Galaxy 3. It was just a really cool concept of blending like some of the really unique level design from Mario Galaxy with some of the more traditional items and platforming segments of the 2D games. And man, I just loved that game. And coming from Mario 64 DS, it felt like a dream to be able to control Mario with the circle pad instead of the D-pad. That was just such a huge improvement. So it felt deeply rewarding to have a 3DS at that time. When I played that game, I was like, yeah, this feels like I'm playing a Wii game on a handheld. That's amazing. And the 3D, you know, most people don't like the 3D, but I loved the 3D. When I first played the 3DS at a Best Buy, I played Pilot Wings Resort, and one of my favorite Wii games was Wii Sports Resort, just for that flying around mini game. And so they had that whole thing on a handheld, and it felt amazing to be able to play that and see Woohoo Island in 3D. And yeah, that was one of the times when I was like, alright, I gotta get this thing for the 3D, not just for Paper Mario. So I, for one, had the 3D slider cranked up all the way every time I played it. Probably killed the battery, probably killed my eyes, but it was worth it. Cuts the frame rate in half on a lot of games, but man, it was just so cool. What did you think of the 3D feature, Kaiju or Victor?
Either way works. It was something that I definitely used a lot as the time that I had just the normal purple 3DS. But as we'll get to probably here soon, eventually I no longer had a 3DS because I was able to acquire my own individual 2DS system. And that was, again, another Christmas present, which is... It's kind of funny how we were able to do 3DSs 3 different Christmases, and it still managed to be something of a wow factor each time, because you got yours. Then we got one for the family, and having 2 3DSs in the house was insane. And then 2 Christmases later, everybody basically got a 2DS. And so from there, I never really used the 3D function anymore because it wasn't available to me. But when I did have it, I would use it pretty much the entire time. I thought it was a really cool feature, but I remember being really confused as to why like half of the content you could consume on the 3DS didn't have the 3D function. Like Netflix didn't use it, of course, and certain applications didn't. Even some games didn't, especially later in the console's life cycle. But anytime that it was available in most first-party games and in most other games, I would definitely have it on. But I don't think that it was necessarily a great experience until the new 3DS came out because of how janky it was and not being able to follow where your face was and not being able to see it when somebody else was playing it. I know that was a good way for you to make me not watch you play it anymore because you could just turn the 3D on and I couldn't see what you were even doing. So, but when it was like a one-on-one experience with just me and the console, I would definitely have it on. And I guess it was so crazy to see that, and I was younger at the time, that I wasn't able to really see its flaws. And I could definitely see for someone that was a little bit older it being annoying or straining on their eyes, but I never really ran into that. And I remember the first time being able to see it was at GameStop and playing Street Fighter 4, Ultra Street Fighter 4's demo, and just really being blown away at how cool it was, because that's a good looking game, especially for 3DS. And so being able to see that really cool 3D effect was attractive from the beginning, and it wasn't something that I wanted to let go, especially it being the main function of the console.
Right. Yeah. That's one of the things I was like, well, it's the main gimmick, and I think a lot of the games early on did a good job of making you feel like you benefited by using it. 3D Land, for instance, had a lot of puzzles that were much more easily solvable if you used the 3D. So,
yeah, definitely. That was something that it had, was it being very integrated into it, and also being integrated in all the applications and bonus games like the AR cards. Using the 3D function was really cool to see that.
Yeah.
How it applied, being an AR game and seeing your own house or living room around you, and the face raiders having it built around, because like those mini games were designed around the 3D function. And I feel like later in the system's life cycle, more and more games, just because half the consoles of the 3DS family don't have the 3D function, it just wasn't a necessity later for people to design the games around it.
Right. Yeah, but there were also games that didn't necessarily use 3D to benefit you in gameplay, but there were several games such as Ocarina of Time 3D or Star Fox 3D that just basically remade some Nintendo 64 games. And so for me it felt like this is something I now get to experience in a new dimension. And like, yeah, there's usually upgrades to the graphics and stuff, but playing it in 3D made it feel really cool, because 64 was obviously Nintendo's first foray into 3D games, and so having them actually be presented in 3D, I just felt like there was a really cool way to kind of pay respect to that whole entire platform. Just thought that was pretty cool, that they kind of targeted 64 games for the remakes.
Yeah, maybe they should have waited on Mario 64 DS and done it on 3DS.
I've thought the same thing. or at least made an updated version that would let you use the circle pad. And like, honestly, I don't care if the graphics weren't up-resed at all. It'd be cool to be able to use the circle pad and be able to use the 3D. But you know, Mario 64 DS did have analog controls built into it with the use of the touchscreen, and so it would have been really cool if you could have just if they could have just somehow mapped that to the circle pad. But I don't know, that probably would have been difficult to do. But I want to talk about so you talked about getting a 2DS, and then later on you got a new 3DS XL. I'll talk about my experience with upgrading. So I ended up having the original 3DS had this unfortunate issue where the bottom screen was elevated, and so opening and closing it, especially if you had it in your pocket and you were walking around with it all day, which I always did, would cause the top screen to get scratched by the bottom screen. So I ended up having these two really big gashes, and I didn't use a screen protector on the top screen. I only used one on the bottom screen, so I thought I would be fine. But it makes it where the clamshell design to protect the screens feels kind of pointless because you end up getting all these scratches. So I had to it made me so sad, but I had to send in my blue 3DS for repair. They ended up saying, we can't fix it, we can send it back to you, or we can send you a new 3DS. And I also had my L and R buttons had stopped working, and so I said, okay, just send me the new one. And so they sent me a black one. It made me really sad because I loved that blue color. Blue was my favorite color back then. Ended up getting the black one, and yeah, just had to live with it. It was pretty sad. I had made a lot of memories with the old one, but all my progress got transferred over. And then that 3DS also had problems. It got scratched as well, but I had a screen protector, so fortunately it just scratched the screen protector. But the L and R button stopped working, the A button stopped working, and so by the time that Majora's Mask 3D released alongside the new Nintendo 3DS XL, I started playing that game and couldn't even play it because I couldn't hold up my shield or L target or anything, and I was just like, alright, this is terrible. So I put it down and waited until I could get the new 3DS. I remember somebody was saying, hey, there's going to be this new 3DS that's going to have face tracking 3D, and I just did not believe that. I was like, no, that's too scientifically impossible. Like, that does not seem like a technological advancement Nintendo would make. But then it came out, and I got it. I ended up I finished up Eagle Scout as part of Boy Scouts, and one of the things my dad had done is said, alright, if you don't finish this, you can't play any more games until you finish this. So it ended up being pretty perfect timing to where when I wrapped up that, a bunch of people gifted me like money to say good job, and then I was able to play video games again. So I used the money that people gave me and bought a new 3DS XL. And I was hesitant to get the XL at first, but now I could hardly go back after having that bigger screen size. And so, oh man, I put many hours into the new 3DS, and I love it. It was a great system. The 3D upgrade was amazing, and the processing power was boosted as well. And the internet browser too was also completely revamped, which made you able to watch videos, look up guides a lot smoother. So yeah, there was a lot of advantages to the new 3DS. I think I probably played it more than the original, for being honest. And I still do play it to this day. I still really enjoy it. And fortunately, none of the buttons have ever stopped working. The A button does sometimes misinput and read two inputs when you press it, but I mean, it has held up a lot better. So I'd say I definitely like it more than the original. What about you? What model of the 3DS has been your favorite?
The practicality of the 2DS is really nice. The screen size is a little bit bigger, but I don't know if this really counts, but I had a really nice trigger case for my 2DS, and so that just worked out really well when playing games like for long term because it was really comfortable, and even though the wedge model of the 2DS was not everybody's favorite because of the form factor, but having that case on there made it really good, and so I think I have the best experiences with that. But I've gotten used to the new 3DS XL, which was something that took a while, especially because I thought that the C or the circle pad or the C stick or whatever it's called, I thought that would be actually like an analog stick, just smaller and actually movable, and I don't really use it that much anyways because of that. So that's not really a big upgrade in that regard. So I think the regular 2DS would be my favorite model, because also it's really sturdy and portable and just comfortable overall, especially with that extra case that I have on there. But not everybody had that.
I am a huge fan of the form factor of the 2DS XL, or the new 2DS XL, and I really wish they had made the 3DS XL look like that, because I really like it.
It's a lot lighter weight, but at the same time that makes it feel cheap to me. I feel like it's made out of really cheap plastic, and so I'm not a huge fan of it. I think I like the new 3DS XL more because of that.
Yeah, well, the fatal flaw of the new 3DS XL is definitely the something about the finish on it is tend to flake off. Ugh, pretty terrible.
Yeah, I still have to buy a new backplate, because currently all of the paint started to chip on mine, and then one day it was in my pocket, and I had it in my pocket at work, which I never do. This was recently, and all of a sudden, when I pulled it out of my pocket, basically all the paint had chipped off in my pocket, and it was just everywhere. And so I just covered the back in duct tape until I can buy a new panel. But I don't really know where to look to get those.
You can order it off of their website. The problem is they only have special editions for some reason. Like, you can only order like the Samus 3DS or the Pikachu 3DS or the Zelda one, but you can't order normal colors. So what I ended up doing is just buying a case for it off of Amazon and just slapping that on there. It makes it a lot thicker, which is kind of a problem because it's already so huge, but it was really my only solution. And then the inside, it started to kind of chip away too, so I just kind of rubbed it off and got a sticker and put it on the inside like a skin. So I've kind of had to baby my 3DS over the years to get it to still function, but yeah, that's kind of the best way to go about it. Hold on a second. I'm going to go step aside and grab my 3DS really quick, but I'll be right back.
Yeah, I've always been more of a skin guy myself. I have a skin on my 2DS, a Monster Hunter 4 skin. I don't have a skin on my new Nintendo 3DS XL, but I do have a skin on my Switch dock. It used to be on the full Switch, but I ended up taking it off because I just didn't like it. But I like it being on the dock. It adds a lot of flavor. Because I just don't have money to buy the extra special edition consoles, so being able to buy like a $10 skin is something that helps me add more character to the console without having to spend a ton of extra money on an additional console that I don't need.
Definitely. So, before we get into the software, which is obviously pretty important, I want to maybe talk a little bit more about the kind of features the 3DS had baked into it. I think one of the things that made me love the 3DS so much is just how much of a reason they gave you to keep it with you at all times. I mean, like I said, it offered me a chance to take pictures and listen to music, which probably most people that were older wouldn't use it for that just because it's not super great, to be honest. But they hid a lot of things away in those apps. I mean, the cameras ended up really disappointing me because, yeah, you could take 3D pictures, but they looked terrible. But it was still pretty cool, and it was really cool when they used it in games like the Face Raiders and AR. The camera quality mattered a lot less. And man, I played those AR games to death. I caught every fish in the fishing AR game. So I hope
that's crazy.
If I was to get a 3DS now and do that, yeah, I probably wouldn't do that because I'm older, I have less time. But still, that was fun enough to do, and I ended up getting a extremely large, like AR card as big as a poster size from not my Nintendo, from Club Nintendo, the good old days. So, yeah, that was really cool. Definitely miss that, the days of Club Nintendo. But some of the other, I mean, two of the really big features I super loved were play coins, which were earned by keeping the 3DS in your pocket, and every 100 steps you'd earn one play coin, and you could use them for in-game purchases. And a lot of games use them, surprisingly. And the other thing I really liked was Street Pass. You want to tell us about your memories of Street Pass? And maybe what...
Yeah, I think that... No, go ahead.
Just what games you feel like used Street Pass the best?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind with Street Pass was the Mi Plaza. And, of course, when the 3DS first started, there was only 2 games regarding the Mi Plaza. And that was when you Street Pass somebody, you would be able to go into a puzzle game and they would randomly give you a puzzle piece. And then you could use play coins to also get puzzle pieces. And so the objective was sort of just build up all these different pieces over time and complete these levels or these puzzles based off of different Nintendo IP and other games that were popular at the time. And then you could go in and look at the puzzle in a 3D space, and that was really cool. And that utilized so many of the different functions, like the 3D aspect, the Street Pass, and the play coins. Then you had an alternate game called Find Me, which was a linear RPG, and it was turn-based. And so basically when you Street Pass somebody, they would come in as a hero, and you'd see their Mii come in and face whatever enemy you were facing at the time. And they'd get a couple turns in, and just over time you'd chip away at these different enemies. And then you could also use the play coins to hire out just random mercenaries that were dogs and cats. And so they didn't have really a personality like somebody at Street Pass. There was always a difference between people you just bought with your play coins and people you actually passed in real life. And they would basically do the same function, but it was just another example of utilizing the play coins as well as the Street Pass. And so I played that a lot, but then all of a sudden they dropped, which those games are free, those two, but they dropped 4 games which you could purchase, and we ended up buying all of them. And one was themed around spaceships, one was themed around growing a bunch of flowers and sort of having a garden, and one was themed around these giant wars where the people you Street Passed represented armies and you could go off and fight. And then the other one was kind of like Luigi's Mansion, and you had to explore different levels of this giant mansion tower. And they were all super unique, and I have good memories of playing all of them. And they weren't the games where you just sit down and play them start to finish, because if you didn't have play coins, then you had to Street Pass people, and you could only earn so many play coins in a day. And so you just kind of chipped away at all of these games slowly over time. And so they got you to just continuously play them for months, basically, because you just came back to them each day. It was kind of like a mobile game, I guess. But they all had a lot of personality and individual characters within each game. And even though you'd only be getting in them for a couple minutes each day, it was really cool to just be able to play them over a long period of time.
Yeah, I agree. I also think one thing that just made the whole Street Pass thing feel so cool was, well, just in general, the 3DS's use of Mii characters made it feel like a true handheld Wii. Like, you could just shoot your Wii characters right over to your 3DS and play games using your Miis. And Street Pass made it feel kind of like you were taking your Wii with you and meeting other people, and it's just so cool. And at first, I'll never forget my first Street Pass. It was insane, and it was like mind blowing because I had waited so long for it to happen, and What, are you thinking of the person we would street pass a lot?
No, wasn't your street pass somebody named Turd?
Yes, the first one. But it was still mind-blowing. It was still mind-blowing. It was like, dude, I street passed a guy named Turd. And that was so cool. But you may remember this. Over time, Street Pass began to kind of evolve what it meant to me because there were so many unique experiences with it. And one of them was my first convention I ever went to. I just was street passing like crazy. And it was just like, holy crap, I'm street passing dozens of people and meeting all these people, and my Meat Plaza was just blowing up. And so that was a very unique experience. But another one was once our family started to get more and more DSs, I could count on us getting a street pass every day. I could get like 5 or 6 street passes 10. Every day. And then...
And also all the neighbors had them as well.
That's true, yeah. So as time went on, and we could definitely get more street passes. And it began to be kind of funny because we would send custom messages to each other and have little micro conversations where I would say one thing, that person would say another thing. And we would just send these messages to each other and also be like, hey, dude, you really helped me out in this game. And a lot of times the games, one of the cool things is the Street Pass games would base what the character could do for you based off of their shirt color. So it'd be like, hey, can you change your shirt to a yellow? I need a yellow for this level. And someone would be like, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I totally forgot about that.
And
it's weird.
And so...
how many things just like... there are things hidden in there that I completely forgot about. I forgot all about that.
Well, you might remember this. Another service the DS offered was Swap Note, which was the ability to send each other handwritten messages, recordings, pictures. It was very cool. And I remember using Swap Note to message people and say, hey, can you change your shirt to yellow? So...
yeah, Swap Note was another thing that everybody in the neighborhood would... I mean, you weren't... mostly the people in the neighborhood were my friends, but you still had a 3DS and would talk to them on Swap Note. It's not like they were in-depth conversations by any means, because you could only just send a few words on a Street Pass message, or just like a couple pictures in a Swap Note, or like a 10-second recording. But all of a sudden there were just these inside jokes without even like really making them set. Like they just became inside jokes just because of the Swap Note, and like 10-second recordings that we just remember and were hilarious just because we would listen to them on repeat through the Swap Note. And it wasn't like, none of us had phones to text at that point, so it was a cool way to interact. And it's not like it was super convenient and I could send someone a Swap Note, hey, come over at this time, and they would see it in time. But it was still really cool to have that function. And eventually Swap Note was taken down, and that was a sad day.
That was a sad day, but they did replace it with a successor that was not as good. And I'm sure you remember why Swap Note was taken down.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was used for some shady, non-Nintendo approved means. Needless to say.
Yeah.
Although, I will say, Swap Note did have... it had a successor, but I'd say the real successor to Swap Note, which took it to kind of a global level, was the implementation of Miiverse. The 3DS had a very large-scale update, which, honestly, we haven't seen anything like this since. But the 3DS had a huge update one day where they introduced several new features, and those features were the implementation of themes, which you could purchase themes from the shop and give your 3DS a custom flair on the menu. And they also implemented a little bit later down the road a game where you could earn little badges to stick on your home menu as well. So there really was a lot of customization. But they also implemented Miiverse, which started on Wii U and then was brought to 3DS later down the road. And of course, my first experience with Miiverse was through the 3DS, and I think it was a little more... it made a little more sense on the 3DS since you could pop in anytime you wanted and not have to, launch a console to make a post. And so, man, I spent a lot of time on Miiverse, and I actually documented almost everything I did within game on Miiverse, because you could post screenshots from your games, and I got to meet a lot of cool people that I'm still friends with today, a lot of them. So that, yeah, Miiverse was a pretty cool experiment that we haven't seen anything like since. I think Nintendo's kind of given up on the moderation thing and maybe leaned more towards just, hey, just put your screenshots on Twitter or whatever. But it was kind of nice. It was a cool experience, and you knew you were going to meet some cool gaming people there and not have to kind of be lost amidst the sea of like everything Twitter has.
Yeah.
So I missed that. That was really cool. But yeah, we used to post on there and draw stupid drawings, and it was a pretty cool way to interact with people.
And you could access it on Wii U and on your computer and phone, so it was pretty cool how widespread it was and accessible.
Yeah, and later down the road they made it where you could save screenshots on your 3DS and then make a post on your computer using that screenshot and not have to do it on your DS, so that's pretty nice. And they had it was always such a hilarious thing to observe, because there were so many rules of what you could and couldn't do, and there were limits on how many posts you could make per day, and it was just hilarious seeing the kind of trouble people got into on there.
Yeah, even our close friend was banned from making posts.
And do you remember the me that represented like the main moderator of Miiverse?
I can't remember.
I think his name was Tom. And everyone hated Tom. They'd be like, if they'd update it and be like, you can now only make this many posts per day, and people would be like, dang it, Tom. Like Tom just personally was responsible.
Yeah, I think maybe he was the one who got on me, because at one point I got restricted for 2 weeks, and I used it a lot because it was fun, and there's people to talk to and people that had shared interests, and having it banned for two. Oh no, I remember what I got banned for. I was trying to get a code for Super Smash Bros.
Yeah,
the demo, and you couldn't say anything about codes. If you mentioned your friend code or asking for a game code, they would delete your post, and if you did it too many times, you would get your account restricted. And all I wanted was to play Super Smash Bros. And there was a demo going around where people would get codes from Nintendo, and then people would try to give them out on Miiverse. So I just for hours was inside the Super Smash Bros. Miiverse channel, just trying to get a code for the demo so I could play it before it came out to the rest of the public, and ended up just getting my account banned for 2 weeks, and it was really discouraging.
That was sad. It was kind of dumb that you couldn't share your friend code on there, because it would be like, hey, want to play Smash? Yeah, you can't do that. It was like, what? That's the whole point.
Yeah, but I mean, you could still sneak it, and I remember I friended a few people off Miiverse and played Animal Crossing with them and Smash Bros with them.
Yeah, there were ways to sneak around it, but yeah, it was a little bit.
Well, shifting gears,
right?
Probably to wrap things up here. Why don't we just discuss software before we end up going?
I did want to mention one more thing about the Nintendo's baked-in software before we move on, and it was the abnormally that was Nintendo Video. I mean, think about it. If we don't talk about it, nobody's going to talk about it. Nintendo Video was this super weird service Nintendo offered. Later down the road, it became downloadable, and they would update it about once a week with the new videos. And a lot of them were 3D. The whole point was really to kind of make you get to watch some short 3D videos. And it was so strange. And honestly, a lot of them didn't really feel appropriate for a Nintendo handheld. A lot of them were kind of like, I don't know, kind of vulgar. And
yeah, they had like a deal with College Humor. So there was some explicit content on a kid's handheld gaming machine.
And also there were several 3D music videos that also, could contain some explicit content, and there was really no warning. So there were lots of videos on there that were just so weird, and I still like rack my brain for what they were called to try to find them on the internet, but it's so hard. But there was Dinosaur Office, which was hilarious, and there were a lot of really weird Nintendo advertisements for the 3DS within the 3DS. So it was like, why would I want to watch that? But I remember one thing they were really pushing on there was the fact that the 3DS was their first system where you could download an entire retail game straight to your DS.
Yeah.
And so they had a lot of Nintendo videos pushing that, but they were so weird. So yeah, effective marketing, because I sure remember. But yeah.
Yeah, and I guess they were also trying to get you to show your friends the videos so they would be like, oh, I want to buy this.
Right. But you and I both didn't have access to YouTube back then because we were pretty young. And so Nintendo Video was kind of like our YouTube for a while. It was like, this is where we go to watch hand-picked videos and be entertained once a week. And it was so weird, but I still find myself thinking of almost all of those videos now because a lot of them were strange. And then they actually put some like pretty cool ones on there that made a little more sense, like Kirby, what was that show called? The Kirby Super
Right Back at
Kirby
You.
Right Back at You.
Superstar.
Yeah, Kirby Right Back at You. They put some 3D episodes of Kirby Right Back at You on there, and that was cool. But yeah, we can move on to our
Bravest Warriors.
Oh man, by the guy from Adventure Time. That was pretty strange. But
There's some funny stuff. Dinosaur Office is
still hilarious
up there when it comes to humor.
Yeah. I mean, I quote that all the time. So thanks, Nintendo Video. But it feels so weird that the Switch barely does anything the 3DS did, considering it had all these options. And you'd kind of think Nintendo would want to give you a reason to take your Switch with you places like Street Pass, but no, they really haven't. Kind of sad.
I think the Switch is mainly leaning into just the software and the multiplayer aspect of taking it places.
Yeah.
Anyway, software of the 3DS.
Let's talk.
I actually have a top 10 list of games.
Oh, dang, okay. Well, we can go through our
I made
go through our faves.
a couple years ago.
Want to go through our favorites and then talk about like maybe our favorite single player and multiplayer experiences, and then if you want and you have your DS, we could go through our activity log and tell our top 3 or 4 or 5 games or something like that.
Sure.
I mean, I got my DS here. I'm trying to finish up a part in the game so I can save. But
Here, let me I'll go ahead and pull that up now because I'm not mid-game.
But you can
Yeah,
start.
okay. I'll go through this top 10 list. My favorite 3DS game would be Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, which I mainly played on Wii U, but there had the function to transfer your data back and forth really easily. It was an app you downloaded on the 3DS, and then it was just a function built into the game on the Wii U. So anytime I was at home, I would come home and immediately transfer it to the Wii U, and then when I knew I was going to be going somewhere, I would transfer it to the 3DS. So, and it's the same exact game, it's just one looks better and is easier to control with a full controller. And so being able to play handheld and on the TV was kind of like the Switch experience before that was a thing. Of course, it was less convenient because you had to transfer your data, which took a couple minutes, but it was still really cool to have that back and forth, and I love that game so much, and I don't think anything will ever top it as my favorite video game. And then, kind of cheating, but my second favorite game would be Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, which was just an amazing expansion to what 3 was. 3 will be my favorite video game because it was the first game in the series I played, but I think 4 is, to date, still the best game in the entire series, and probably up there when it comes to the best 3DS games, because I know there's a difference between my favorite and my best and the best 3DS games. But I would consider 4 to be up there, and it was really heavily advertised alongside of the new Nintendo 3DS with the functions that it offered, because I'm pretty sure it launched on the same day, actually, as the new Nintendo 3DS. I ended up getting it the following year because I didn't have any money. Third favorite would be Ocarina of Time 3D. That was the first Zelda game that I ever beat, and only because Sam said that I couldn't beat it, and so I made it my objective to beat it, to prove him wrong. And I did beat it, and right now I'm going through Majora's Mask for the first time, which I got recently, and it is very close to being as good, but I think the Ocarina of Time is still better, but I know that's a big debate. Fourth would be Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. A lot of fun memories playing that before I even owned it, because I watched Samuel play it, and then we had stayed up almost all night at a friend's house, and all three just traded off playing it and watching the person that was playing it at the time if we weren't playing it, and we got really close to the end, and that actually took place over a couple of different get-togethers where we would just chip away at it each time we'd come over, and that was really fun. And then I ended up getting my own copy, but before I ever had my own copy, there was also the DS download play function, which basically gave you the entirety of multiplayer until you closed the app. So even if the host wasn't playing anymore, you could still play online multiplayer with people, and that was a really cool function, and I got to log a lot of time into that before I even owned the game. Fifth would be New Super Mario Bros. 2, which I already talked about, and so I'll skip along that. Six, Super Smash Bros. For 3DS. That was the first game I ever pre-ordered and got on launch day, and I was just really excited. Like I already talked about, got my account on Miiverse Band, trying to get a code just to play the demo of the game, and it was really cool to have Super Smash Bros. On a handheld. I know it's not everybody's favorite game, but there were really cool functions built into that specific version that I really enjoyed. Eighth would be Terraria. Having it on a mobile device was really cool, and I don't like touchscreen, so I never had it on any cellular device like a smartphone or anything. But it had so many functions, and it came out later than the 3DS's life cycle, but I had a friend over when it came out, and it came out towards the end of a year when it came out, and so we just played it waiting for the ball to drop on New Year's Eve, and just got so far through it, and that was the first time I'd ever actually played through the game to completion, and it's a fun game to this date, and I have it on basically every console that I own, but the 3DS was the first place that I really ever played it. 9 is a game that I got when I first got my 2DS, and that's Moon Chronicles. It's kind of like Metroid and Doom combined. It was originally a DS game, but this was like a reworked version of it for 3DS, and it was a first-person shooter on 3DS, but I hadn't really ever played many first-person shooters, so it was just a really cool experience, and the story was a little shallow, but it was still really cool to watch it unfold. And then 10 would be another Monster Hunter game, and that's Stories, which was very different from any other game in the series, it being a turn-based RPG, and I remember that sort of being the game that held me over until World came out, because it came out the September before World launched, so that was just a really cool experience and fun to play towards the end of my time really playing the 3DS a lot.
Nice. I'm looking.
That's a good mixture of first party and not first party, I feel.
Yeah. I'd say I lean more towards first party, but I mean, over time I've branched out, but at first, when I first got it, yeah. I'm looking at mine though, and all three of my top 3 are not games. This is insane.
Yeah.
I played Nintendo 3DS Sound, which was the music app, for 553 hours.
I'm pretty close to you actually on that. That's cool. And I also had it. This is only my time from when I had my 2DS as well. So you got to remember that I'll say my Sound is number 2 for me, and it is 443 hours.
looks like my second at four. Wait, how many did you say? 443. Well,
Yeah.
look what my second one is at 443.
Oh wow, what is it?
Internet browser, and I used
Holy cow!
yeah. I'll tell you why, because I didn't have a laptop or a phone or anything, and so everything that wasn't a baked-in app, I used the internet browser for. And I'll tell you what, one of the reasons I used it so much is because I used to use it to listen to music on YouTube. So really, the top two are both a lot of music, but I also used it, you could watch, once the new 3DS came out, like I said, it had that revamped video player. Instead of using the app for YouTube, I watched YouTube on the 3DS. So I started my account on there. I used to watch a lot of PBG and Chadtronic on my 3DS. And so, yeah, tons of YouTube. And I also used to go on Nintendo's website every day and view all of their new announcements. Looks like the last time I logged in was last year. Same with music. But the third is Miiverse at 402 hours.
Man.
And that's crazy.
Holy cow, you spent so much more time than I did on New Year's.
And it says I played it 3,238 times.
I must have done it on Wii U more than I did 3DS because my Miiverse is nowhere near that high.
I'm going to go to my actual games and tell you my top 10 played games on here. At number 1...
Here, really quick, I'll go through my top like 5 used applications really quick before you go through.
Sure,
things.
yeah, go ahead.
My number 1 played software is Netflix, and that has 803 hours.
That is insane.
Now that's only when I got my 2DS, because I still watch Netflix a lot on the family 3DS as well. The purple one, which was, I know it's a higher than that because other people watch Netflix on it as well. Then sound was third with 443, and then second, and then third was Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate with 189 hours. And then, which, of course, I played that a lot. And then Monster Hunter Generations was 115 at number 4. And then my 5th was Miiverse at 101 hours.
Nice.
Also, I spent more time on my 3DS with Monster Hunter 3U than I thought, which is at number 6, and it's at 98 hours. So I guess I was pretty split half and half on Wii U, because I know I have, I think, just over 200 hours in Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. But anyway, you can go through your top 10 software.
Sure. My number 1
games
is Super Smash Brothers for 3DS at 252 hours. No surprise there. Loved that game, man. And that was definitely one of my favorite multiplayer experiences on the 3DS, other than Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, like you mentioned. And
yeah,
right under that is Fire Emblem Awakening at 209 hours, which is insane. And then below that is Animal Crossing New Leaf at 199 hours, almost 200. And then looks like the Nintendo eShop is below that, but I'm not going to count that. And then Street Pass Me Plaza, 114 hours. And your favorite, Hatsune Miku Project Mirai at 112 hours. And
I don't know how you can do that.
I don't know, man. It's pretty fun. And then Pokemon Art Academy at 105 hours. Did not expect that, but I did draw a lot. Mario and Luigi Dream Team at 92 hours. What am I on right now? Hold on, I'm kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so then in number 8, Fire Emblem Fates at 91 hours, and that's Conquest specifically. And then at number 9, one of my favorite 3DS games, The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds at 84. And then
did you just play it multiple times or something?
Oh yeah, I did an insane hero mode run, no pickups, I didn't pick up any heart pieces. I didn't pick up any items or magic refills or anything. And I did a no-death run of that, and that was insane, while wearing a cast. And that was what I did to lead up to the release of Triforce Heroes. And that was, I have the proof. It's on Miiverse if you want the proof. I put 75 hours into Tomodachi Life. So that's insane. And yeah, and then it keeps going down at a pretty... I got 67 in Hyrule Warriors, 67 in Ocarina of Time, 63 hours into Fire Emblem Shadows of Valentia, which I just beat last year. Very good game. And so on and so on. You got Bravely Default, Paper Mario. Yeah, so on. Yeah, tons of great games. I think my funniest one is... if you go to my average playtime, my number one average playtime is Kirby Planet Robobot, and my average playtime is 23 hours and 51 minutes, because I played it one time, and I played the entire game 100%. and then I closed it, and I've never played it again. So it takes you 24 hours to get 100%.
That's awesome.
But I think if I was going to rate my favorite 3DS games, I would probably go ahead and say that Fire Emblem Awakening was definitely my favorite. And it was just an incredible game. And then Super Mario 3D Land, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, A Link Between Worlds, Dream Team, Project Mirai. Those are a Kid Icarus, can't forget that. Those are some of my favorites for sure. And then one more thing I really do want to give the 3DS credit for is its Virtual Console lineup. You had what's it called? You had NES, Game Boy, Super Nintendo later on down the road, and all the ambassadors had Game Boy Advance games. Game Boy Color was a super rare library to play on a Nintendo console. And then you also had a couple of third-party ones like Game Gear, as well as the entire compatibility with the DS library and a lot of DSi software. So I played a lot of games for the first time on here. I played through Super Mario Brothers, Metroid, Zelda, Mega Man, Metroid 2, Kirby's Adventure, Link's Awakening. I had a lot of patience back then, and I played through almost all of my retro Nintendo games via the Virtual Console on here. So that is a very, very... I associate a lot of memories with the 3DS playing Game Boy games and NES games on there. And I think being able to just shut the DS, put it in your pocket if you were getting frustrated, and then open it back up later and keep playing was a big thing, and my patience helped me get through some of those games. Did you have any Virtual Console games you enjoyed on there for the first time?
Yeah, I didn't have a whole lot, but the ones I did have I really enjoyed, like Mega Man 2, which is a game that I would put on my top 10. I think it's on my top 10. I really love that game. And I got to the final boss and never beat it. It just was too hard for me. I also played Super Mario Land 1 and 2 for the first time on Virtual Console, and that was a lot of fun. And then within the past year or so, I've gone back and gotten a couple other ones, like Super Metroid 2, Metroid 2, and Harvest Moon, and A Link's Awakening. Just a whole bunch of them, actually, and just download them straight there. And so I chip away at those every once in a while when I feel it, but I feel like I always want to go back to platformers. I think those hold up really well.
For sure. And I think the 3DS did have some pretty cool emulation things, especially for Game Boy. If you held down Start, you would get the original aspect ratio and not the aspect ratio, but the original 1-for-1 pixel count. And what they did is they would add a Game Boy frame around it to make you feel like it wasn't just a tiny little thing. And that was kind of my preferred way to play, actually. And then you could hold down a certain button combo to make the screen look green like the original Game Boy. And then if you turned on the 3D slider, it would indent the screen a tiny bit from the Game Boy overlay. Like, it would really make you feel like you were playing a Game Boy. It was so cool. It just...
Yeah,
I think
awesome.
That just goes to show the overall feeling I have about the 3DS is that they poured so much heart into it. It is not anywhere near as impressive as the Switch from a technical standpoint, but everything about the 3DS just screamed like detail. Like, even just icons on the 3DS home menu, if you blew on the screen, they would spin around, and that's just an added level of detail that didn't need to be there. And a lot of times they would hide things on the back of them if you spun them around, and there was just so many cool things hidden in the 3DS. It really felt like a system that was meant to be played for hours and hours, and you would never discover everything hidden inside of it.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, with the Switch, once you turn it on, you've pretty much seen everything there is to see. I think the Switch is focused a lot more on games, but the thing about 3DS is it had all of that, but it also was still very focused on games. There were so many games and so many virtual console games and a lot of fantastic download-only games that you could only get through the eShop. And yeah, man, it was a well-rounded library, and I'm still working on completing my library of games. I've got some very long RPGs. Like, I picked up Project Cross Zone 2 not long before the 3DS died. I've still got to play through Bravely Second. And I recently finished the Fire Emblems on there. I've played every Fire Emblem, so yeah, there are a lot of very long games you can get into on there. To wrap this up, are there any games you've been playing through recently that have still brought you back to the 3DS that you want to talk about?
Yeah, well, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, I've been playing Majora's Mask for the first time. I am not super far, but I know the game is not quite as long as Ocarina of Time, as far as I know. But I am still trying to figure out how to get into the second dungeon, and kind of stumped there. But then I've also been playing Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate more, just because it's an infinite game, basically, and there's a lot of areas that they're remastering for the new game, and so I'm just wanting to go back to that world that I love there and experience those areas again, just to remember what they were like and get excited to see them reworked for the new game. And like I said, also just chipping away at those virtual console games every once in a while, like Link's Awakening is the one that I probably pull up most when I'm just working away at those. As far as anything else goes, I think that's it. I want to continue to work on the Ace Attorney trilogy, but I was at the end of the first game and had to I transferred my data between 3DSs recently and ended up losing all of my digital save on all my games. So I basically just watched the anime to finish off the first game, and so I'm ready to start the second one sometime soon. So that's also on my list of things to do.
Well, I was going to say another Capcom game. You said Monster Hunter and Ace Attorney. I've been playing Resident Evil Revelations. I did play it on Xbox One, but I wanted to go back and experience the 3DS version because that was arguably the biggest third-party release ever on 3DS. A mainline Resident Evil title on the 3DS. Very cool, and it is a beautiful game. And I still haven't played Samus Returns, and I am dying to play Samus Returns, and so I'll be looking out for that, as well as Luigi's Mansion Remake. There are still games I'm interested in playing, so the 3DS is something I plan on playing for many years to come. And in the meantime, I'm playing through Project Cross Zone 2 and Resident Evil. But man, it's such a great system, and even though people begged for it to die as soon as the Switch came out, they were still announcing games, and they were like, "No, die." To me, I miss it, man. I still love it, and I keep the memories alive. But the community of Miiverse, Street Pass, new announcements, all that stuff, it's kind of dead. It's just a game simulating, or not simulator. It's just a game device now. It's not really the social device it used to be, but. Whenever that Street Pass light lights up, rarely these days, I do get the good memories of the old times. Or whenever the orange light goes off when a friend's online. I usually have one friend online every once in a while, so it's good memories.
Yeah, definitely. I don't have many negative things to say about its history other than being jealous of people who got it before me.
You know what I definitely miss? $40 games.
That's true.
I mean, oh man, I missed that. That was a good feeling, just being like, yep, we're announcing this new game. And some of the games, like, you could get more time out of them. A lot of RPGs on there you could play for hundreds of hours versus games for Switch now that could be $60, but it takes a couple of hours to beat. So, I mean, sometimes you just paid less for more, and that was totally fine. So cool.
Yeah.
But I guess if we don't have anything else...
Some games were cheaper than that.
Exactly. Sometimes they were... Yeah, exactly. And especially on the eShop. But I was just going to say, if we're done here, I think we can... If we don't have any more thoughts, I think we can wrap it up here.
Yeah, I think I've said all I need to say.
I mean, I'm sure we could talk about this for probably like 12 hours, but... It's already been 1 hour, so we'll wrap it up there. But we want to thank everybody for watching all the way through this video, if you've gotten this far. And we'll encourage you in the comments to let us know your favorite memories playing the 3DS. What your favorite games were, what kind of 3DS you had, anything you want to share with us. We're happy to talk about that with you. And if you like this kind of long-form video of us having a discussion, drop a like on the video and let us know in the comments below, because we would definitely be interested in doing more videos like this to kind of break away from the normal videos that we do that are normally on the shorter side. So yeah, just let us know your feedback, and until next time, be sure and drop a follow to our Twitter if you want to see the gameplay from the latest releases, and join our community Discord if you want to keep the conversation going. So until next time, I have been Samuel.
And I have been Victor. And always remember to stay
one up.